Hi everyone. This is Rachel Maddow. So I think it says something that even American mainstream media are getting alarmed now. Well, at least their pundits. But you know, probably too little too late, because they should have been asking questions right from 9/11, and unfortunately they didn't. They did their job of promoting the propaganda, and America has been under rule of tyranny since then. And in fact that tyranny has grown to the extent it now controls most of the world. Calls itself the coalition. It's got Zionist power and agendas at the helm, and a handful of people own the vast majority of the world's wealth, and what they don't hold in the pockets, nonetheless they hold through the control of the powers that control the people, and they own the nations in terms of government. And you know, the whole of Europe is in their grip at the moment, and we've witnessed that. We've witnessed the power of it because of the power that they've had to enforce lockdowns throughout the world, and Sweden's still getting its knuckles rapped for, you know, failing to decimate their economy on behalf of protecting the public from an alleged pandemic that's been blown up out of all proportion. And we know for a fact that the death numbers have been rigged to hell. And you know, this is just one. I'll leave you the link from a UK medical doctor explaining the amount of fraud that has been going on. Pandemic fraud. That's what we're dealing with. Fraudulently bumping the fatality numbers up in order to justify the lockdown, and you know, to get on with all their other agendas, you know, killing old people because apparently they live too long, and they're a risk to the global economy. Now, something that Rachel Maddow's picked up on here are these military looking guys, this military outfit, and she's concerned, as a lot of people are concerned, because they've got no insignia. We don't know where they're from, who they're serving. Who are they? They're dressed in military type outfits to help control the protests, which we know have been infiltrated by agent provocateurs who've instigated violence and all kinds of things, smashing shop windows in and inciting looting and other crimes. But the vast majority of the protests have been peaceful, and I think we need to focus on that really. You know, the vast majority are peaceful. So does it really, does it really warrant this kind of armed unit standing there? Now, in my previous videos, I think from last year and the year before, and before that, I've been expressing deep concern about the presence of this military corporation in Britain, and they are available for hire to governments, including our own government. And as a corporation, a global corporation that has a base in Britain, you know, and we're talking a full military unit, you know, they've got everything that a regular army has and more. They get hired by the American government, for example, to perform operations in the Middle East, I mean anywhere really that they can deploy them. And because they're a corporation, they aren't answerable, you see. They aren't accountable. They're answerable to nobody, accountable to nobody. They've been involved in things like, you know, child abuse, child trafficking, trafficking of women, sexual abuse of women in the countries where they've been stationed. You know, I'm not saying all the employees at DynCorp are involved in that kind of thing. You know, people take jobs, don't they? But let's just say they've not got a very good track record, and as I say, they're not accountable. And it has been a great concern to me since the Tory government has given corporations the legal right to bring in as many staff as they need from abroad. Now, when that's a military outfit up for hire by your own government, then what does that mean? If the government's going to be hiring that corporation to police protests, peaceful, largely peaceful protests, righteous protests against police or government atrocity, then where are those troops that will be stationed on our streets? Where have they come from? Who are they? They're not British, are they? They could come from anywhere in the world. Hardened soldiers, you know, suddenly on our streets. And it is very likely that this is what we are seeing here. Now, this is exactly what I was warning the British people about, my fellow citizens, over the last few years about this DynCorp and how dangerous it is to have a corporate military outfit answerable to nobody, up for hire to anybody, corporations, governments, you know, as they say here. We go wherever and whenever the mission calls to support a safer, more stable world. Safer and more stable for who is what we need to ask. And, you know, I mean, I shared it in relation to Brexit and what's coming after Brexit, you see. Because it's really serious. The brutal reality of martial law. And Health Secretary Matt Hancock confirmed the government was drawing up plans to impose martial laws and curfews in a no-deal Brexit. And, you know, this was from, I think it was last year. Yeah, January 2019. Well, don't think those plans have changed. Okay. These plans haven't changed. They are ready for the hard Brexit in December. They've not got one single trade deal sorted out with anybody else. Now, I've been seeing things on my Twitter, people saying, well, you know, I'm going to check where things are coming from. I'm not going to buy chlorinated chicken. I'll make sure I don't buy any American products. People just don't seem to understand that, look, dears, we have 168 trade deals through the EU. That because the EU is such a huge market, we get affordable food, okay, safe, healthy food that falls in with EU health and safety regulations on food and medicines and all kinds of other products. And those 168 trade deals are with the EU itself, and also lots and lots of other countries around the world. So we have access to trade with all those other countries. So we're not just talking about food and medicines, we're also talking about just about every product that you buy, that we buy in Britain right now. Now, A hard Brexit means that when you leave the EU, you wave goodbye to all those trade deals. So that means everything that we are buying, that we're able to buy right now, we will not be able to buy after December, after Boris Johnson's hard Brexit. And that's why they've planned to have martial law, because they know that there's going to be mass social unrest. Matt Hancock confirmed, Health Secretary, the government was drawing up plans to impose martial law and curfews in a no-deal Brexit. Now, they've already got us all on a lockdown, training us with this pandemic, you know, and I'm not saying that they haven't released a new virus, okay, a new flu virus that actually is no more deadly than any other form of flu, and this one actually appears to be less deadly to children, okay, than regular flu, but more deadly to elderly people, which, as I've already stated, you know, that's again part of their agenda, because this criminal cabal presently that's got a grip on our planet and every nation, you know, they do tend to benefit in 5 ways at least from every plan of action, you see. So, because, you see, they know, Boris Johnson knows, this government knows that the British public still have no idea of what a hard Brexit is. The British public that were lied to by the Vote Leave campaign, that were spied on, that were targeted by social engineering PSYOP corporations like Cambridge Analytica. But nonetheless, even the majority of people that voted Brexit, the majority of them were told that there would be a deal, that no, of course you're not going to lose all your food and medicine, of course we're still going to have a deal. We just won't have Brussels ruling us, you see. But they turned, this government never ever intended to have any deal, because a deal does involve a commitment to upholding things like health and safety regulations, environmental protections, workers' rights, human rights. The government doesn't want to uphold any of those things. They want to take us back to Victorian Britain. 2 world wars never happened. We never had any human rights. People in Victorian Britain, the majority of us, 80% of the population living in poverty, had no human rights. So that's Victorian Britain. Why do you think they've planned martial law for no Brexit? Already, as I say, they've got people training. You queue up for your food. You don't just walk in the supermarket and buy food anymore. Oh look, there's less and less food on the shelves. Oh, it's because of coronavirus. Well, I'll tell you, them shelves are going to be emptier and emptier and emptier. And your food's going to be priced. Prices are going to skyrocket. Okay? Be prepared. Be prepared to lose your home. I've been warning. Go through my Brexit videos. People wonder why I get so upset. Because I am so concerned. Not for myself. I'm concerned for the next generation, because they're the ones that are going to have to be raising their children, if they get a chance to, under this criminal cabal that will be in power for how long? 1,000 years? And who will be turning their guns on the British people in that event? DynCorp, with troops brought in from where? Now you're witnessing the reality of it. in American streets, in American cities, and all over a peaceful protest. And, you know, I've written this on my Facebook recently because people need to understand. You see, people talk a lot in control about controlled opposition and blah blah blah. Do people really? Do you really understand what controlled opposition actually means? How it works? How it operates? Well, I'm going to give you an example here, and it was in response. It is in response to what's going on with the media right now in Britain and America, that both Trump and Boris are being criticised by the media for not having lockdown soon enough and not enforcing rules strictly enough. Okay. Trump knows the whole thing's a scam. But like his pal Boris here in the UK, the liar had to tell the truth in order for their puppet MSM to play the role of opposition and galvanise the public into demanding and accepting lockdown. So the banking collapse and bailouts could happen amid distractions of the pandemic. And then all the other agendas such as 5G, trace and tracking, forced vaccinations. Now, imagine if Trump or Boris had called the lockdown and then folk were losing jobs, businesses and rights. See what I mean? Wise up fast, people. Save the children. Because, you know, one of the most alarming things that's coming out right now is that, as Mr. Buttar rightly explains here, Bill Gates wants to vaccinate all the children for coronavirus as well. I mean, you're talking mandatory forced vaccinations, which is actually medical rape. That's what it is. It's medical rape. If it's forced, they want to inject toxins into us, an experimental vaccine, and they want to give that to our children. A vaccine developed in just a few months, or even if it was after a couple of years. And imagine Britain as a nation under martial law, and then they bring in these forced vaccinations, Britain to be the first country to receive them. We are in a very, very dangerous time. Now, Dr. Buttar, towards the end of this video, he is literally in tears, pleading with people to save the children. To save our planet. Because, as I've stated in previous videos, a consciousness that has no empathy, no compassion, no conscience, they're intellectually defunct. They are intellectually disabled. They are not fit to lead anybody. They are crazy, mad people. Their judgments are imbalanced. They're out there. There's too many people. It's a trope. There aren't too many people. That's the fact of it, right? I think everybody on the planet could fit in Britain, which is a small island. You could literally put every person on the planet in Britain. We could all stand with space around us, right? There are not too many people on this planet. What there are too many crazy, psychopathic, sadistic, fascists, as I call them. There are too many of them in positions of power and influence. They've been allowed to get too wealthy. They've created a system that allows them to succeed. precisely because they have no compassion. Because anybody with compassion, a care and conscience in this world just could not get that welfare and see little children starve. You couldn't go into Africa and steal, just take the resources of Africa and get super mega rich yourself, but meanwhile leave the children literally starving in the dust where you've left them. And then actually return there to make even more money, to start vaccinating them, actually to stop them reproducing because you've said there's too many of them. Do you understand? Do you understand what controlled opposition is? Do you understand what this media narrative is now about Johnson needs investigating, blah, he should step down because he's killed loads of people with the lockdown? Well, he's killed loads of people by not having the lockdown soon enough, when actually he's killed lots of people through the lockdown itself. The elderly people and sick people have been denied healthcare. Cancer patients have been denied operations and treatments and diagnosis even. That people have been driven to suicide, that people have been murdered through domestic violence, that they've literally shut down the health service, the NHS. And meanwhile, 2 million a day going to private healthcare corporations in Britain that the Tories have shares in. And then we've got all the evidence of a rigged election, a rigged postal vote at least, and that is what won them the election. And it explains it all in this brilliant document by Ricky Coxon, which I've shared previously. But he breaks it all down and shows that you look at the postal vote, the amount of the thousands and thousands of people in each constituency that had voted by post. Allegedly. The numbers were that high. Higher than any other time, in fact double. I mean, you know, just look at it. Double than previous years. Postal votes, 2019. I mean, literally double from what they were in 2015. And in all of those constituencies, still the Tories won by just a couple of thousand votes. But the postal vote amounted to thousands and thousands in each constituency. They knew the results of that the day before the general election and brazenly broadcast it through Laura Cussenberg on the BBC News. According to Dominic Raab, it was looking really bad for Labour. The postal vote was looking really bad for Labour the day before the GE. That is solid evidence. Should have been investigated. There should have been questions. Now, this is especially important when you're looking at a government that needed total control over Parliament in order to get Brexit done and deliver its criminal hard Brexit. So they gave themselves a landslide. And from there, it's been chaos. But the media is fully supporting them. Look at the attack on Jeremy Corbyn. Why? Who are the media serving? Wasn't it strange that every single newspaper was against Jeremy Corbyn? Apart from the Mirror, which actually, when you read the Mirror stories, they appear to be on the public side, but actually, when you read what is written there, it is devised to inspire the opposite. Of what they claim to be supporting. They're very tricky. They're playing mind games with us. That is what they're doing. And they've been doing it for a long time. I was just looking to see if I still had the article up by UK Column, which is talking, I'll leave it under this, which talks, which discusses, it's a really good article, which discusses the social engineering plans by this government, which is a crime against the British people. But if, you know, if we have got a government in on a rigged election, then that government knows full well that the majority of the people in this country did not vote for them. They know that we are the enemy. Don't you understand how dangerous that is? People need to understand what a dangerous situation we are in right now. And it isn't COVID-19 that is the threat. It's the force of tyranny now sitting at number 10. And the amount of power that they've got, and the people controlling them, who do call themselves the coalition. For your eyes only, this was a leaked memo from the coalition. That is what they call themselves. I'll leave you the link to the European Commission, which is all about vaccines and how they want vaccine passports by 2022. This was from 2018, 2019 they were planning this. Vaccination passports. They refer in that document to the coalition on vaccine passports. Who is this coalition? It's a coalition of rich people, and as I say, at the helm of it, Zionists, people like Christine Lagarde, who is the director of the International Monetary Fund. Here she is expressing basically a criminal plot to murder elderly people in Western nations, to target them and kill them, even drive them to suicide. Okay? When you've got that type of consciousness controlling our presidents, our prime ministers, our governments, and through them controlling our military and our police, and hiring organisations like DynCorp, which actually their corporation, if that's one of their corporations, they own, the banks own them all. Every corporation is in huge debt. Their profits are marginalised, okay, because they pay off the interest of their huge debts and call the rest of it profit, which itself is a crime. But, you know, that's the madness that we are living in. But this is the social engineering, okay? That is exactly what has gone on. Because like it says here, imagine if Boris Johnson had called the lockdown. People don't like him. That's why the guy had to hide in a fridge, okay? People don't like him. But imagine if he called the lockdown and then people started losing jobs and businesses and homes. You see, people would be open a lot more to information, like Mr. Buttar is sharing, Dr. Buttar, and many, many other doctors like him. 90% of doctors, actually. People would be more open to that. People would be asking questions. But if Boris Johnson says no, let it run through the herd, which is exactly what should have happened, well, then the mainstream media can come forward to play controlled opposition as the other hand of the coalition. The same puppet master controlling Boris Johnson and Trump is also controlling the mainstream media. Now the mainstream media come with an opposing narrative. No, we've got to have the lockdown. And then keep that narrative going in order to keep the lockdown and all the controls and allow everything to happen while people are still distracted about having to queue for 2 hours to go and get a bit of food, or they're being told, you know, you've got to wear masks on public transport now, which by the way are totally useless, and you know, keep your social distancing. That still they're enforcing these rules, and the media's there saying, you know, Boris Johnson, they need investigating for not having a lockdown sooner. This is absolute lies and nonsense. But that's what controlled opposition is all about. Spinning a seemingly opposing narrative, but both of them are working toward the same agendas of track and tracing, mass surveillance of the public, forced vaccinations, social distancing, queuing for your food, queue. But the thing is, people, is that, look, you know, after winter, during winter time, because it's darker and it's colder, people get more susceptible to viruses, viral infections, especially coronaviruses like colds and flu, because your body temperature lowers, your body's using more energy up, it's more stressful, you're not getting as much vitamin D3 through sunlight. Vitamin D3 strengthens the immunity. People tend to eat a lot more sugary foods in winter. Sugar feeds viruses. It lowers immunity. I'll leave you this link, it explains it. Eating any kind of sugar has the potential to reduce your body's defences by 75% or more for 4 to 6 hours. You see. There are lots of ways that we could have dealt with this pandemic without forcing everybody into a lockdown. But all of those ways are ignored, and instead the media puts the blinkers on the public to guide you, herding us like sheepdogs into the chosen routes. The chosen routes. You see? The chosen routes that every nation owned and controlled by the coalition, the corporate coalition, have decided we have to go down. And they do want mass vaccinations. And these vaccinations are very, very, very dangerous, as I've explained in a previous video, that these vaccinations can cause cancer 2.5 years later, or leukemia, all kinds of problems that will not be immediately noticeable. It'll be after 2, 3, 4, even 5 years that suddenly people start dropping like flies. You see. But if people do not build their immunity up, now, during spring and summer, is where people start to build their immunity up. They're outdoors, they're getting more sunshine, people are generally happier, less stressed. You mix with people, you build your immunity up, especially for children. Children, it's vital for children to mix with other children, to be outdoors, to be playing, to be building their immunity up, because their immunity is developing. So even more they need contact with germs, all kinds of pathogens for their body to be fighting and getting stronger. But you see, people are being denied that opportunity. And so come winter, when they'll lift the lockdown in September, the very worst time, and everybody's going to be coming down with everything, unfortunately. And then I'll tell you, by November, oh, second wave, second lockdown, December, out of the EU. Oh, suddenly everything's changed while there's been a lockdown. But you can't protest, you can't do anything. You will be queuing up, and people will get very stressed and angry when they've got to pay 4 times more for less food. And actually, the vast majority of them have lost the jobs and the businesses. Yes, expect social unrest. Expect martial law. Expect corporate troops on your streets, Britain. Nobody's going to hear you scream. Don't just take a look at Palestine. Near 70 years that's been going on. Nobody is going to hear you scream, Britain. And that is why I am promoting from next week, okay, next Wednesday, 7:30, everybody in the nation, we do it every week. You get on your doorstep, you clap, you cheer, you shout in support of your human rights and in honour of the people that fought for those rights and struggled so hard to establish them. They were hard won, and you don't give them up, and you let this government know that we are not going to leave the EU without a deal, okay? We are going to have a deal. And they are not going to remove our human rights from us, and our democracy, and our law, and our liberty, and our sovereign rights as British citizens. They're not going to do that. We need to do it. It's the only way. Because, you know, if you go out in the streets and start protesting, then that's when they're going to be bringing the police in, isn't it? The riot police. From your doorstep, you don't have to travel anywhere, do you? You don't have to traipse through London. You don't have to put yourself at risk. You're standing on your doorstep. You've done it every week for an NHS that actually has denied healthcare to people who need it. Now do it every week for your human rights, for your children's rights. And in memory of the people that sacrificed so much to give us those rights. Do it. If you care, you'll do it. And it isn't really much to ask, is it? A clap and a cheer for your human rights. Because it's a waste of time standing up against them. We need to stand up for something. And that's where we gain our strength and power. But, you know, as I say, I've been proven, my concerns have been proven valid yet again. And it's getting closer, people. The monster is getting closer. And we do need to save the children.